Okay, the writings of Luisa Piccarreta. In March 1994, Angelo Cardinale Felici, prefect of the Sacred Congregation to the Cause of the Saints, signed an official letter to Archbishop Carmelo Casati of the Archdiocese where Luisa lived, stating that he was pleased to notify there was no objection on the part of the Vatican on the opening of Luisa Piccarreta's cause of beatification, and formal permission was granted. Luisa's cause was opened on the Feast of Christ the King, November 20th, 1994. In March of 1997, on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of Luisa's death, it was announced publicly that the tribunal responsible for Luisa's cause had determined unanimously that Luisa's life was one of heroic virtue, that her mystical experiences were authentic. Also in 1997, due to the beatification process, two independent, highly qualified theologians commissioned by the Church to review Luisa's writings submitted their reports stating that they found nothing contrary to Catholic faith or morals. And that's a very important step in beatification. In summary, the record is entirely clear concerning the writings of Luisa Piccarreta. The Devil's Advocate is an important analysis carried out in the negative sense by the Church. Not a single objection was raised from the negative side in relation to the beatification of Luisa. The nihil obstat is the approval of a book or writings by an official church censor before the issuing of an imprimatur. The imprimatur is a canonical term for permission needed to publish certain kinds of religious books. The first 19 volumes of Luisa's writings were granted the nihil obstat and imprimatur in 1926. In January 1996, Cardinal Ratzinger released the 34 volumes of the Book of Heaven to Archbishop Casati as part of the protocol for the process of Luisa's cause of beatification. The actual title our Lord gave to these volumes is The Kingdom of the Fiat in the Midst of Creatures, Book of Heaven, the call to the creature to return to the order, to the place and the purpose for which she was created by God. Next heading, the Divine Will. Now the Divine Will, I'm going to give you a very simple one, and that is the Divine Will is the study of not so much getting the person to heaven, but more about getting the person, heaven, into the person in exile on earth. That's what it's really about. The Divine Will is a study of the divine life of Jesus in his humanity, as well as the many of the associated divine workings. Our Lord teaches us the way to live and pray as he lived and prayed upon the earth. Your whole spiritual outlook will change, and so you will be internally changed. Everything is so rich in the writings, I'd almost say flagrant. Our Lord expects us to progress in knowledge. Small increments are sufficient. Whatever your ability and time allow, step by step, stone by stone. Step by step, stone by stone. Our Lord says to Luisa Piccarreta in the writings,
And I love you here in my will. Do you not know that if the wheat seed is not buried and underneath the earth and completely dies, it cannot reproduce a new life and multiply itself? Consequently, while the soul is not buried in my will, and while she does not die completely to herself by inserting her will in mine, she cannot reproduce a new divine life, with the reproduction of all the virtues of Christ, in which true holiness is contained. Because of this, my will should be the seal that is stamped on all your interior and exterior. And when all this has been renewed in you, then you will find true love. This is the best of all holiness to which the creature can aspire. Volume 7.
Our Lord literally took Luisa Piccarreta's life to ensure that the message of the divine will was delivered to creatures. Our Lord kept her in a cocoon of safety. Luisa's life as a victim's soul was the emulation of our Lord's life on earth. She was confined to her bed for 64 years and did not take any nutrition during that time, except for the Eucharist. Luisa took food at the bishop's orders only to vomit it up, a most uncomfortable and undignified existence. All of this was done in obedience to our Lord to fulfil the mission of the divine will. Our Lord says,
The mission of my will was the purpose of man's creation. My divinity never left heaven, nor its throne, but my will did. It not only departed, but descended into all created things and formed their life. And while all things recognized me, and I lived in them with majesty and decorum, man alone drove me away. But I want to conquer him and win him over. Therefore, my mission is not finished. And so I have called you, confiding to you my same mission, so that you place in the bosom of my will him who drove me away, so that all might return to me in my will. Therefore, do not marvel about how many great and amazing things I can say to you regarding this mission, how many graces it can give you, because this is not a matter of making a saint. No, it concerns putting into safety a divine will, by means of which all must return to the beginning, to the origin from whence everything came, so that the finality of my will have its complete fulfillment. Volume 17.
the exercises we carry out are the understanding of the Gospels and its principles, understanding our Catholic faith and its catechism, gaining knowledge from the writings of Luisa Piccarreta, increment by increment. Then our Lord's presence will be felt. Our Lord explains in the writings.
My daughter, the living in my will carries with it the loss of all the rights to one's own will. All the rights remain part of the divine will, and if the soul does not lose its own rights, it cannot be said that it truly lives in my will. At the most, it can be said that it lives resigned, conformed, because the living in my will is not only the union of doing things according to my will, but that all the interior of the creature not permit any feeling, thought or desire, not even a single breath in which my will does not have its abode. Nor will my will even tolerate a human affection of which it were not the life. It would feel repugnant letting a soul live in my will with affections, thoughts, or other things which could have a human will without the divine. And do you believe it would be easy for a soul to voluntarily lose its rights? Oh, how difficult it is. Moreover, there are souls which, when they reach the point of losing their rights over their will, they regress and content themselves with leading a life of compromise, because of the loss of their own rights is the greatest sacrifice that the creature can make. But it is this sacrifice which disposes my kindness to open to them the doors of my will, allowing them to live in it the reward with my divine rights. Volume 17.
The exercises that we carry out, where did you finish off, Rose? There, my divine rights. Are the understanding of the Gospels and the principles, understanding our Catholic faith in its catechism, increment by increment, the writings of Luisa Piccarreta, then our Lord's presence will be felt. Our Lord explains in the writings, please.
Do you believe it is a small thing to live in my will? It has no equal, nor is there sanctity that approximates it. It is real life, not an illusion, not a figment of one's imagination. This life of mine lives not only in the soul, but also in the body. Do you know how this life of mine is formed? First, my eternal will becomes the will of the soul, and then my palpitations, beating within its heart, conceive my life. The soul's love, its sorrows, and all its acts done in my will, form my humanity. These make me grow so much within the soul that I cannot remain hidden, and the soul cannot help but feel my presence. Don't you feel me alive within you? That is why I have told you that there is nothing even remotely resembling the sanctity of living in my will. All other sanctities will be as small lights, but this new sanctity will be a great sun transfused into its creator. Volume 14.